Hi everybody and welcome to Lost Genre Let's Not Meet. And all I'm gonna say before we begin with the first story is that these are the stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So let's go ahead and get started. This one's from user Florianizer. I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us three at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left would put you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are window doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kinda leans into a small hill. My brother and mom both had the habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. "I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway." I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try to scare me or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in our car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door to the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what she was talking about and she looked equally surprised as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall, white male, wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago, in my mid-20s, that I pieced together what my brother had unknowingly warned us about, a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. Creepy spooky, right? I mean, imagine you're that kid and you just put those two things together and figure out, oh wow, if things had been just a little bit more different, maybe I'm not here to make that connection and I'm actually just gone. Oof. Okay, so if you're ready, let's move on to the next story. This one is from user OfficeFern007. My husband and I were at the supermarket and our baby was being specially fuzzy, so he took her for a quick drive, the motion of which usually calms her down. It took only about 10 minutes to settle her and I was still in the store, but was unsure how much longer I'd be and there's poor cell reception inside, so he pulled back into the parking lot to wait for me. It was an unseasonably nice day, so he took her in her car seat to sit on one of the benches outside the store. He took a business call and had just sat down, absent-mindedly rocking the carrier, when a woman, well-dressed, mid-30s, average height, fit build, approached them. It's not uncommon for people to ask to play with our baby. She's got big rosy cheeks, soft wisps of gold hair, and the most adorable gurgly toothless grin, especially when she's deep into a good nap. But her nap schedule is paramount, so my husband was preparing to tell the woman she actually couldn't play with our baby right then. She walked over right in their direction, brimming with nonchalant confidence, and before he can even finish his sentence explaining she was napping and not to be touched, she picked up the carrier and started walking off. He was in shock for a minute, not fully believing someone would be ballsy enough to do something so sinister in plain daylight, so he said, "Excuse me, put her down," as his panic mounted. She remained calm this entire time, but when he called after her, she started walking away more briskly than when she'd approached. He ran full speed ahead, tried to grapple the carrier out of her hands, finally resulting to restraining her arms. This woman yells, "Help! He's trying to take my baby! Kidnapping! 911! Help!" kicking him in the shin and pulling a pink bottle of pepper spray out of her handbag. Of course, no one in the parking lot was clocking the earlier interaction and assumed he really was a kidnapper, a lone man in a Deadpool t-shirt versus a tiny well-dressed woman. Immediately, a man knocked my husband to the ground and was holding him down. He could hear bystanders encouraging the woman to file a police report, but she was doing a very convincing job at acting shaken up and insisted she just wanted to get home. To make matters worse for my husband, she was driving a minivan. He was in a raw state of panic, realizing the entire parking lot had banded together to inadvertently facilitate the kidnapping of our daughter. He was begging and pleading with them, but no one was listening. They just kept screaming at him that the jig was up and he needed to lie still and wait for police and stop terrorizing a young mother. My husband finally had the novel idea to show them family pictures on his phone. But, too panicked to think clearly, this manifested as him shouting, "I have pictures of the baby on my phone!" Which, of course, everyone interpreted as him having either stalking photos or worse images of the baby. In that moment, a man kicked my husband as hard as he could in the ribs. At this point, I was coming out of the store and I thought he was being robbed by these people. I was yelling for security, so panicked my chest constricted and I could barely get any sound out. It was only then I realized he did not have our baby with him. When I saw she was being held by a woman, I was relieved. I thought maybe the woman had intervened to move my daughter out of harm's way while my husband was being robbed and was walking away to get help. I couldn't find a security guard outside the store, so I ran up to the people holding my husband down, waving my wallet, pleading, "Take everything you want, just let up and leave us alone." And one of the men holding him down said something like, "Lady, we need to wait for police to deal with him." And I was so confused. Why would the muggers have called the police? I just kept stammering, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" and made out someone saying he tried to abduct that woman's kid. I did not understand and was sure I'd misheard him. My husband would never hurt a child, and we have 4 kids. If he were going to commit a crime, bringing another kid home would be at the bottom of the list. I kept trying to understand what the man was saying and suddenly, it all clicked. I looked around for the woman who had the baby carrier and she was halfway across the parking lot. I went into total ballistic tiger cub mode, literally leapt out of my heels and sprinted across the parking lot. I'm not a UFC fighter, I've never even taken a self-defense class, so all I could think to do was grab the woman by her hair and squeeze her throat with my other hand, which didn't do much. She was getting away even as I grappled with her. Amazingly, none of the other bystanders had yet to connect that my husband was telling the truth and this woman was absconding with my baby. I yanked on her hair as hard as I could and that was enough to make her drop the carrier. I was so scared and surprised that I actually just threw myself on top of the carrier, covering the entire thing like a blanket, and stayed that way without saying or doing anything else. The woman left. No one person tried to stop her, even though she was clearly leaving without the child she claimed was hers, which would be pretty damn incriminating if I'd watched the scene unfold. Within the next couple of minutes, police had arrived. After all that, there were still several bystanders who explained it as my husband trying to kidnap the baby. The police, to my horror, assumed that she must not have had bad intentions. The first questions they asked me after getting her description weren't investigative. They were questions thinly veiled, trying to convince me not to pursue charges, still placing blame on my husband. A small sampling. Does your husband and the baby look dissimilar? Is there a chance she thought he was abducting the baby and she was trying to intervene? Could your husband have been doing something inappropriate or violent to the baby that would make her feel compelled to extricate the baby from the situation? Did she seem groggy or confused? Could she have mistaken either of them for her own family members? They spent more time verifying that the baby was actually mine than they concerned themselves with the fact that the baby was not actually hers. My husband had called his brother at that point, who works in an office with a lot of lawyers, and connected with one ASAP, who gave us the priceless advice to get every officer's name and badge number, to request copies of the store security tapes right away, and to escalate our complaint higher up the chain if these officers weren't taking us seriously. Finally, we had reason enough to believe we were being taken seriously, and we went home, and both just shook and cried until we had to get our other kids from school. My husband is seething with rage and grappling with a feeling of helplessness from how little he was able to do, and has 2 cracked ribs from when the man kicked him. To the officer's credit, they did ask if he'd like to press charges, but considering the man was genuinely convinced at the time that he was on the right side of intervening in a kidnapping and stayed to talk to police and apologized profusely when the truth became clear, he declined to press charges. Amazingly and frustratingly, there were still people who stuck around to talk to police who were giving my husband dirty looks. And one man who even implored the police to involve CPS to verify it was really our baby. So, parking lot kidnapper and parking lot skeptics, you better hope we don't meet. Edit. After hearing from everyone and weighing the pros and cons, we got in touch with the police and decided to move ahead with pressing charges against the 2 men involved in anything beyond basic restraint to set an example that these men made the wrong decisions, even if they did come from a well-intentioned place. Thanks for weighing in. Oh, and that's the kind of stuff you find in this sub. Stuff that really makes you, crawl out of your own skin. I mean, imagine just being there, hopeless and impotent, somebody taking your kid away and strangers restraining you from being able to be with your child. Oh, I mean, just reading that story made me feel so powerless for OP's husband. That must have sucked so much. Okay, well, now let's move on to the third and final story. This one is from user Proud Queer Sister. My parents moved into our house about 6 months before I was born. When I was 4, my sister came along. It was an idyllic childhood for 2 young girls, and most of our days were spent in the large oak tree on our front lawn. Then there was Sammy. Sammy was about 7 when I was born, lived next door, and had a severe mental disability. This isn't going to sound nice, but we were a little frightened of him. He was a big kid and very loud and strong. My parents explained why he was like that, and he was never malicious, but we just didn't understand. One thing that freaked us out was that he would often watch us as we were in the front yard. In hindsight, that was our saving grace. One summer morning when I was 8, making my sister 4 and Sammy 15, she and I were out in the front yard as usual. We were making tents for our American Girl dolls. Lost in our work, we didn't notice the man with stringy oily hair watching us from the sidewalk. "You little girls having fun?" he asked. We nodded silently, stranger danger embedded thick in our skulls at the time. "What's her name?" he prodded, pointing at my doll. "Molly, mister. We have to go inside now." I yanked my sister up by the arm. "See you later," he replied. We ran into the house, leaving our dolls outside. The man was all but forgotten after lunch when we went back out to play. Except Molly's clothes were missing. I thought stupidly that maybe a squirrel had taken them, when we heard someone clearing their throat behind us. It was the man, and he had Molly's clothes. "I need those back, please," I said, to which he replied, "Come get them." It wasn't smart to go up to him, little sister in tow. It really wasn't, but I wanted my doll's clothes back. Of course, the second we got close, he grabbed both of us by the arm and started yanking, pulling us towards the creek that ran on the other side of the street. My little sister was screaming. I was in shock and must have felt like a bag of cement. And I clearly remember thinking, Wow, Mommy's going to be so sad when she can't find us. A great lurch from behind threw the man off his feet, and he and my sister went down while I unsteadily held my ground, spinning to see who it was. It was Sammy, and he was fuming. He kicked the man, grazing my sister in the process. "Nobody touches my girls," he stuttered, kicking the man again. The guy took off running. Sammy scooped my wailing sister up and took my hand and walked the two of us back to our house, where my mother was frantically running out onto the lawn, having seen the end of the encounter. The man was never found. Sammy passed away last year of a heart defect he had long suffered from. There wasn't a dry eye in town. Wow, those girls had a real live guardian angel living right next door to them. You can call it luck, but I think Sammy actually saw them as his little sisters and that he was their protector. And it's a good thing he was too. He wasn't creepy looking out the window, he was just, looking after them. Nobody touches his girls. Alright. And that's the kind of thing you would find in this sub, Let's Not Meet. So please, let me know if you like these stories and I can start including them in future videos. So, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, go ahead and click like. Again, if you haven't joined the community yet, what are you waiting for? Just press subscribe, it's right there. Okay, having said all that, I will see you guys on the next video.